how to get it to, anyway, to you, but I'll get some help with that at the point I can figure it out, because it might be helpful for you to go back and listen to that again, and maybe even another time, and make some more notes. And somebody earlier suggested they wanted to listen to it with their spouse, because there were some things that they would need to talk about together. So as soon as I can, I will get you those Zoom links so that you can revisit that video, that recording. Somebody else I think was going to speak at the same time. Somebody else have something to offer?
Yeah, that was me. John Snyder. I was really touched yesterday by the fact that God has already anointed what He anointed us to do. That was really encouraging.
Yeah, that was. I thought Alexis did a great job at the beginning. One more person share?
Kim, I think, can you hear me?
I can, yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Pete.
I'm trying these new headphones on today. I want to see if they actually work as much as I paid for.
So far, so good.
So far. There was a lot to digest yesterday, but there was a couple of things in the administration that I as a part-time pastor, really learned a lot from it. And I've still got a lot of questions that I'll probably have to contact you guys later about it and everything.
Well, that will be perfectly fine. That's what we expect. Okay, so let's jump in. I've tried to put kind of organize the conversation today in a sense that some of you will be able to drop off of it as we go along, and I'll make that really clear, kind of who it applies to and who can drop off at whatever point. So on this call, we have members of other denominations. So you're ordained in another denomination. And if you fit into that category, raise your hand. Either you can use a little raise hand function that I can't remember, I think you find under the participant, or just raise your hand like this. If you're a member of another denomination, ordained in another denomination, who does that apply to? DeAndre, that's right. Is he the only one? Okay. Now, I think that means all the rest of you are going to be local pastors. If that's true, raise your hand. And keep it up so I can look at your screen. Okay, Robert, yep, you're raising your hand. Okay, so DeAndre, I'll tell you when we're finished with what you need to know, but I'm going to include you as we go along. And some of you are local pastors with an MDiv, and some of you are local pastors that still have to pursue education. If you are a local pastor and you have an MDiv, a Master's of Divinity, raise your hand. Okay, so there are several of you. When it's time for you to drop off, I'll let you know, because I'm going to talk about education and you don't have to do that. I think those are the different groups that we kind of have among us. Now, some of you are local pastors pursuing course of study, and some of you are local pastors who are pursuing an MDiv. And at some point, I'll distinguish between those two groups, and a group of you will drop off. So I think it'll make sense as we go along. I'll try to be clear. If I'm not, just tell me so. So we're going to start with a document that says local pastors in WNC. And what I want to say, DeAndre, to you as a member of another denomination is that first off, I call you O's. The O stands for other. Your actual designation is OF, which is a full member of another denomination. For all the rest of you, you're either going to be an FL or a PL. If you're an FL, you're a full-time local pastor. If you're a PL, you're a part-time local pastor. Those are designations we've been given by the denomination. We didn't make those up. And just like you have all this reporting to do in your local church, we have all this reporting we have to do to the denomination as part of what it means to be a connection. So DeAndre, often for shorthand, I'll refer to you as an O or an OF. And now you'll know kind of why I call you that or why you're referenced as that. So to become eligible for an appointment, most of you became a certified candidate. You went through that whole process. And then you were approved by your DCOM, your District Committee on Ministry, to be licensed as a local pastor. DeAndre's process was similar to that. He had to meet with the transfer committee, which recommended him for approval for an appointment to the cabinet. So whatever your circumstance, you've gone through one layer of a committee that's interviewed you, gotten to know you, had conversation with you, and has recommended you for appointment, and now you're all projected for an appointment. So basically, that's the first part of this local pastors in Western North Carolina sheet. And everybody but DeAndre will get a license in the mail, which is actually the document that gives you ministerial authority. DeAndre, you're going to be operating under your ordination credentials from the Baptist Church. Baptist, right? DeAndre, aren't you ordained Baptist?
And Kojic.
What?
And Kojic. In the Church of God in Christ.
Church of God, right. I'm like, I'm still not sure what you're saying. Yes, in Church of God in Christ. So you're operating under those credentials. So then this is true for all of you, including DeAndre. Under the first year under appointment category or section, you're going to be assigned to a mentoring group. Local pastors and members of other denominations are all assigned together to a mentoring group. That will happen within your district unless you have an MDiv. You'll still be assigned to a mentoring group, and the mentoring program is the same, but we separate out those with MDivs and those who are pursuing education at the time, just because your circumstances are a little bit different. I coordinate the local pastor with the MDiv groups. Your district coordinates all the other local pastor and members of other denominations mentoring. DeAndre, we actually would let you choose, and we'll communicate this with you, which of those two groups you decide to participate in, but you will have to participate in one of them. And so you will be in a mentoring group until your educational requirements are complete if you are pursuing seminary or course of study. If you are pursuing an MDiv, you will be in a mentoring group for if you have an MDiv, you will be in a mentoring group for 5 years or until you become a provisional member, and then you go into the residency program. And DeAndre, I'm going to show you in a minute what your requirements are for mentoring, but it's on another piece of paper, so we'll get to that in a minute. Then you're also part of the mentoring program, which I'm going to go over in more detail in a minute, or the next 2 bullet points. So hold on to those. You do have to meet with the DCOM annually. All of you have done that except DeAndre, so you know what that looks like. But DeAndre, that's going to become your accountability partner from now on out, is your district committee on ministry. I also will say that we use a lot of acronyms. That came up in the last hour. If at any point anybody says something with an acronym and you don't know what they're talking about, stop them, including me, and say, I'm sorry, but I understand what you're talking about. Could you please, help me? So DCOM is District Committee on Ministry, and I'm going to reference that from now on. So you have to meet with your DCOM annually to continue your license. If you are applying for provisional membership this year, you meet with your DCOM to get approved for provisional membership. The DCOMs in every district meet the same weeks of the year. So if you're going to need to be approved for provisional membership, you would meet with your DCOM in December. If you are going to be continued with your license, but not provisional membership, you'll meet with your DCOM probably in early February, sometimes late January. And DeAndre, that's when you'll meet with your DCOM. And they have to continue your license from year to year. DeAndre, you don't have a license, so they're not going to continue your license, but they are going to recommend you continue under appointment. And this year, I know of someone that the DCOM did not continue, a member of another denomination, continue under appointment, and the cabinet quit their appointment. So you do have to take it seriously, because the DCOM is going to, they have the authority to continue your opportunity for ministry. And then for everybody but DeAndre, you're going to get that license, and every year it has to be signed by the district superintendent, and they'll communicate with you when and how they're going to do that. Now, after the first year of appointment, if you're not already in seminary, then you're going to be expected to either start seminary or start course of study. You get kind of a year just to get your feet wet, to get familiar with your appointment and kind of the expectations. But education is a high priority in the United Methodist Church. And we're going to talk more about what those educational expectations are. But you have a year before you have to get started in that if you're not already started with it. For course of study, I'll tell you more about that. But if you're going to be in course of study and you're a full-time local pastor, you have 8 years to get it finished. If you're a part-time local pastor, you have 12 years to get it finished. That's in the Book of Discipline. So we're not making those numbers up. That's what the denomination says. If you're in course of study, it's a 20-course program. If you're full-time, you're expected to do 4 courses a year. If you're part-time, you're expected to do 2 courses a year. So for example, if you're a full-time local pastor and you have to do 4 courses a year, it should take you 5 years to get it done. You have 3 extra years of wiggle room to get it done. And the same with part-time, you should be able to get it done in 10 years, but you have to get it done in 12 years. So you have a little bit of wiggle room to get it done. Your DCOM is who's going to hold you accountable to getting your education done. And sometimes you'll have a year where, I mean, I hope you don't, but you might have a year where things are difficult at home, or things are difficult at the church, or you've had a new baby, or your mother is ill and you're having to provide care. I mean, all kinds of circumstances might cause you to say, for this year, I can't meet those expectations. Can you give me some grace? And your DCOM is going to do that in most circumstances. And maybe for 2 years, you're going to need that grace, but you're going to have to pick up the expectations at some point. I mean, it's hard. I had a conversation with a local pastor last week, and I know if you have a full-time job and you have a part-time appointment and you're supposed to be going to school and you have a family and other kinds of personal needs, it is hard. And it is part of what it means to be a United Methodist clergy person. So your DCOM will work with you as you can, but they're not going to let you off the hook for good. Okay, I'm going to stop for just a minute and see. We're going to go into more detail about all of that. But is there anything that's just really pressing on you that you need to ask me about now? Oh, will the license come to your new address? That's a great question. Maybe, maybe not. That's not very helpful, is it? I'm trying to think about when they'll be. Normally we would hand them out at annual conference, and then we would mail them right after that if you didn't come to annual conference. And so I think it would be helpful for you, and you're going to be expected to update your mailing address in the system, but probably not till after July 1st. And we'll try to mail you your licenses before July 1st. So for many of you, this doesn't matter, but for somebody like Blake, who's currently living in Maryland and coming back to North Carolina, if you could email Adrienne and just tell her what you want her to do, that would be the most helpful thing. And that's true for any of the rest of you that are moving. If you could just let Adrienne know kind of where you're going to be when, that would be super helpful. Because these are things we do by hand. It's not like we can't do them differently if we know how to do them differently. Okay, Johnny, I'm going to, yeah, somebody else.
Sorry, it's Kelly Mullenix.
Kelly, yeah.
I am in a mentoring group with Lauren Sims Salata already. Will this be an additional mentoring group, or how will that work?
That must be your candidacy mentoring. I'm not sure what group that is. Do you know?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Then you'll stop that group and you'll start a new group. Yeah, that one will end because that's just for certified candidates. Okay, great questions. Let's move on to the next document, which is, it says local pastor at the top, and then it says helpful notes. I don't have the titles of all of them. Do you find, I think it says general guideline. It is, it's called general guidelines for local pastor. And then it says local pastor and helpful notes. Have you found that? Give me a thumbs up if you have. Okay, looks like we're pretty good. DeAndre, I'm going to start with you to say that these are our expectations serving in a United Methodist congregation, at least within the United Methodist Church. So what I'm getting ready to talk about is what the ministerial authority of a license gives you. DeAndre, we're not going to, we can't prevent you from doing your brother's wedding or offering, you go to a denominational event and they ask you to preside over communion. You can do that because you are ordained. But within a United Methodist Church or within the United Methodist system, we ask that members of other denominations have the same ministerial authority that the licensed local pastors do. So I'll just kind of preface that. So all the rest of your local pastors, so all of you are appointed to a local setting. The license gives you ministerial authority within that church or ministry setting exclusively. I'm going to talk about what that means, but that's disciplinary. And to quote the Book of Discipline, it says, people within or related to the community or ministry setting being served. Now, the bishop has the ability all the time to interpret the Book of Discipline. And sometimes bishops will interpret the Book of Discipline in different areas differently. I'm going to tell you in a minute what that has looked like with 2 different bishops that I've served under. But first off, we'll go to the sacramental privileges in weddings. So a local pastor has ministerial authority within the bounds of your appointment. This includes the physical location and the members or constituents of the appointment. A local pastor can do a wedding in the sanctuary or on the church property, and your sacramental authority is limited to those same boundaries. You can take Holy Communion to the hospital or shut-ins if they're members of your congregation. You can do a baptism nearby on a lake or river, but you can't do your college roommate's wedding at the beach. So, for example, Bishop Goodpastor, our previous bishop, would not allow local pastors or people operating under a license for ministry to do a church member's wedding at the beach. Bishop Leland has a little bit of a broader understanding of what the license for ministry is, but it still needs to be related to members of your church or constituents of your church, within your church or at your church. So for example, if somebody asks you to do a wedding, but they're not a church member, but they want to get married in your sanctuary, you could do that. If somebody wants you to do a wedding at the beach, but they are members of your church, you could do that. But if they're not members of your church and it's not on your church property or in your church sanctuary, you don't have ministerial authority. Does that make, and so the same thing, I know that the state talks about what you can do for weddings, but of course the church gives you the sacramental authority. So if you go to the nursing home, you can take communion to your parishioners that are in the nursing home, but you're not a hospital. If your appointment is not the nursing home chaplain, you can't go do, you're expected not to go do communion for that nursing home unless you had members of your church who were participating in the service or in the experience. I'm going to go through the rest of the document, then we'll come back to that as it's helpful. So Walk to Emmaus. Nod your head if you know what Walk to Emmaus is. It looks like most of you do. Walk to Emmaus, and there are other fourth-day experiences from kind of out of other denominations. Or you have Chrysalis, and Chrysalis is the youth version. Kairos and Epiphany are in the prisons. They come, for us as United Methodists, it's under the auspices of the Upper Room, the Ministry of the Upper Room, or Discipleship Ministries. It's a weekend retreat that people participate in, and the Walk to Emmaus is kind of the United Methodist version. So local pastors can serve as an assistant spiritual director on a Walk to Emmaus or other fourth-day community. A local pastor may not serve as the spiritual director. In addition, a local pastor may not administer the sacraments during a Walk to Emmaus, Chrysalis, Kairos, Epiphany, unless, it's weird, I thought that these were updated, so I need to update this document, unless you have a church member on the walk or there's an elder that is also present, kind of being the overseer of the administration of the sacraments. So that's what you can do for Walk to Emmaus. I'm going to update this sheet and send it to you again, but that's kind of that. Now, I'm going to stop for a minute because this other goes on to a different idea. Any questions about that? Okay, seems to be pretty clear. Now, participation in annual conference. So we're supposed to have annual conference in June. We normally have annual conference in June. How many of you have been to annual conference before? Raise your hand. Okay, a lot of you have. We're going to have it on August 8th, assuming everything works out at Lake Junaluska. If not, we'll do something different. But annual conference, of course, is the annual meeting of the clergy and laity of the conference. Now, when we talk about clergy members of the conference, we're talking about your memberships coming out of the local church and coming into the annual conference. And you will be a clergyman. Everybody except DeAndre will be a clergy member of the annual conference. And So that's what this references. But DeAndre, you are invited to annual conference and encouraged to come to annual conference, because most of what happens is either presentations, information, conversation, collegiality, that's just helpful as a representative of your church. But if we were going to vote on something, members of the other denominations are not clergy members of the annual conference. You're a member of your denomination, so you can't vote on something. But for the rest of you, you can vote on the business of the conference. So if we're voting on the conference budget, you can vote on that. If we're voting on petitions or the consent calendar, you can vote on that. You cannot vote in the clergy session. So after this year, you'll be invited to the clergy session and are expected to come. You have voice, but not vote. So when we go over what we call the BAC, which stands for Business of the Annual Conference, you will not get to vote on that, along with a whole lot of other people in the room. Only members in full connection can vote on the BAC. In the same way, if we vote on general conference delegates and jurisdictional conference delegates, some local pastors can vote on that, but you have to have finished your educational requirements and been 2 years under appointment. So some of you all will be able to vote by the time we vote again, and probably in 2023. But that's an ever moving target. So we're not going to talk anymore about that right now. It's just changing all the time. And liturgical vestment, you can wear a clerical robe or a collar. You cannot wear a stole because that's a sign of ordination, except DeAndre, you can wear a stole because you're ordained. But everybody else, you can't wear a stole. And when you see stripes on the robe, that's about education. So if you have a DMin or PhD, you can have the 3 stripes on your robe. But otherwise, then you're not supposed to have the stripes either. What questions do you have about that? I know that came up on a Facebook conversation. I don't know if we need more clarity. Okay, and then the last part is about retirement. So for those of you that when you retire, you'll still be a local pastor. At that point, you can be recognized as a retired local pastor if you've done some of the educational work. If you've not done any of the education, you won't be recognized as a retired local pastor. You can retire and you'll still get whatever pension benefit you have coming to you, but you won't be a part of the retirement service at the annual conference meeting. But once you're a retired local pastor, if you're not under appointment, you are a lay person again. So for local pastors, you only have credentials for ministry if you're under appointment by the bishop. And when you cease to be under appointment by the bishop, then you're no longer a clergy, you're a lay person. Okay, on that page, what questions do you have? Okay, I'm going to talk about the Yes, I can't tell who's talking.
A quick question. This is Steve Anderson. Being a licensed pastor, does that impact our membership at our home Methodist church?
Yeah, so you will not have membership in a church anymore, and it will be up to you to tell that church to transfer your membership to the annual conference. We're not going to do any paperwork. We don't need any paperwork from them, but they need to pull you out as a member of the church, and they can treat it like a transfer to another United Methodist church if they want to know how to treat it. They can pretend like you've transferred to another United Methodist church, but instead you've actually transferred to the annual conference.
Okay, great. Thank you.
We're going to already record you as a clergy member of the conference. That's a great question, Stephen. I hadn't thought about that, but that's a great question. And that applies to everybody but DeAndre.
Kim?
Yes.
This is Latanya. My robe has a cross on the bottom part of where the wrist is. Is that okay?
You can have a cross, sure. And you can wear a cross.
Okay.
Whatever's appropriate with a cross, you can do with a cross.
Thank you.
Kim,
Yes.
Kim, I was just wondering, on the robes, some of the robes have crosses built into them. Can you wear those?
That'll be fine. Yeah, that's okay.
All right.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to look at the mentoring, and then some of you will be able to leave the call after we do that. So what I have given to you is kind of the outline of how the mentoring program works. We don't have all the details in set up for next year, but we've been doing this program for a good while now, actually. We used to have an individual mentoring program, and after the candidacy went to group, the local pastor went to group mentoring because it had been so successful and seemed to be a good way to do it. So as I mentioned, you'll all be put into a mentoring program, a mentoring group. If you have an MDiv, you'll get that information from me. And if not, then you'll get it from your district office. But pretty much the groups are geographic because we used to actually meet in person, and hopefully we will again one day. The goals of the mentoring program, I'm not going to read this to you like I have some of the other stuff. You can see what the goals are. Why are you in a mentoring program? Well, both because we want you to become strong leaders and encourage collegiality, but also because the Book of Discipline says you have to be. So pretty much once you start candidacy, you're going to be in a mentoring program until you're in full connection, or until you finish your educational requirements as a local pastor. What the mentoring program consists of is there's a district-wide gathering in August, and that's pretty much kind of an orientation, information about charge conference, other expectations of the district. You do that every year, and it's a good chance to connect with your district admin, with your district superintendent, with your district local pastor mentoring coordinator, sometimes with your DCOM chairperson. It'll be 2 hours on an afternoon or an evening in August. And then you'll see where it says spring gathering. We've had a spring gathering in the past. We got a Duke Endowment grant. So for 3 years, we did it at Ridgecrest, and we gave you, our participants, a really reduced cost to be able to come and spend the weekend. Some people did, some people just came for the day, but that grant's over, so we don't have that money anymore. This year, we were gonna have 2 day-long events, and you could choose which one you participated in. One was gonna be in Morganton and one was gonna be in Salisbury, but COVID canceled both of those. So I'm not sure what that'll look like moving forward, but at least if you get some kind of information about a spring workshop or a spring gathering, you'll know what I'm talking about. Now, every group is going to meet 4 times other than those 2 district-wide or conference-wide gatherings. Your group is going to meet 4 times for 2 hours. It's not as extensive as the provisional residency and ordained ministry, but it does parallel that in requirement. And your group will decide, or your group leader will decide when you meet. But because some of you and some of our local pastors are part-time, it likely will either be on a weekday evening or on a Sunday afternoon. Every once in a while, they're on Saturday morning. Some districts organize them so that you can pick which group you want to go to based on when it meets. And other districts organize them based on where you live. So that's just going to kind of depend on your district when those meetings are held and how that gets organized. You're going to have 2 mentors. So every group has 2 mentors. And usually it's a local pastor and an elder that are going to be the mentors. Normally you're going to read a book together. You're going to have some devotional time. And I'm going to show you in a minute what else is going to be. I'm under the monthly group meetings right now. It's a mandatory experience. So if you have to miss it for some reason, you'll need to ask for permission in advance to your mentor, either coordinator or your mentors. And you'll have to do some kind of makeup assignment. The makeup assignment should take a couple of hours because that's the time you would have spent in the group. And the purpose of the assignment should meet the same, whatever learning you were going to do or whatever experience you were going to do in the group, it should fulfill the same kind of expectations. So just so you know that there will be some kind of makeup work associated with it. Now, if you go to the next page, it gives you kind of an idea of what the program looks like. And it's, as I said, it's 2 hours. So 1 hour is going to be around connection and care. It's going to be supporting, encouraging each other, talking about spiritual disciplines. Our topics last year were around boundaries, Sabbath, self-care, and time management. About 30 minutes that you'd spend on one of those. I'm not sure what we're going to do this year. We started talking about it, but we haven't decided. And then the other hour is going to be around a topic. So this last year, we've been working on Wesleyan theology. This coming year, I think your book is actually going to be the Book of Discipline, and we're going to do polity. So you're going to learn a little bit more about Methodist polity in this coming year. So that's kind of the content. It's 2 hours, an hour of connection and care, and an hour of learning or a topic. And then you're going to meet with the DCOM annually. I already said that. That's going to be for you all. I think I already said that. accountability, confidentiality, you can read through all that. So DeAndre, I want you to see where it says finishing this mentoring program. Do you see that? Okay, it says members of other denominations can be finished with a required mentoring after 5 years of service and either a Master's of Divinity or the equivalent of course of study. And local pastors will finish when they either finish their course of study or an MDiv, unless you're a local pastor with an MDiv, and then you're going to do it for up to 5 years. So that gives you the idea of how long you're going to be in a mentoring program. I say it's a good experience. I mean, by and large, if you can be open to the experience and the opportunity and the relationships, we try to train the mentors well. We try to pick people who are excited about walking alongside other people in ministry. And we get really mostly positive feedback. We do an evaluation every year. Mostly we get positive feedback. So I expect you'll find it to be a good experience. If you don't, I want to know about it so we can see what we can do to help it to be a more enriching experience. I should say that every district has a coordinator. So that's who you're going to hear from first, unless you're an MDiv, and then you'll hear from me. And then they're going to tell you who your mentors are, and then you'll hear from your mentors. So you'll have 2 mentors, but then the district has somebody that coordinates the program for the district. And we call them the district mentoring coordinator. Ben, you have your hand raised. What can I do for you?
Yes, because I'm in graduate school and I'm a student pastor, and I know we have a student pastor mentoring group. Does that count as the same thing? Because I know the district didn't assign me while I was serving an appointment with a mentor group, because they said.
Where are you in seminary?
At Duke.
Okay, yes. So your student pastor group will take the place of this group. Now you will still be expected to do the spring retreat if we do that, I think. But other than that, your student pastor group will be your mentoring group. That's right.
Okay.
Is anybody else a student pastor through Duke? I haven't seen that list yet, so that's helpful, Ben. And Brad Thee, and Daniel Corpening, who work with some of all of that, are both clergy members of our conference. So they're able to give you some good, and Brad's on the Board of Ordained Ministry. So he has good information. Those will be good support people for you. Okay, so he's the only one in that category. Okay, I'm going to stop because some of you are going to be able to leave the call at this point. And let me tell you who that is. So if you have any questions before you go, if you have an MDiv, you kind of know about your expectations. If you're a member of another denomination, DeAndre, you can leave in a second, unless you think you're going to be a part of course of study, because that's what I'm still going to talk about is course of study. Or if you're a local pastor in seminary, you have an idea of what your expectations are, and you'll be able to leave the call. So if you're in those 3 groups, do you have any questions before you go? So your DCOM will be your primary place of communication. Yeah, go ahead, Amy.
If we have
Okay, can you hear me?
I think something froze.
Okay, yep, I just switched my internet. We'll hope that I didn't have that happen all day yet until now. Okay, try it again, Amy. What's your question?
If we have questions in the future, can we email them to you, or do we need to maybe look for the answer to ourselves? Try to answer the question ourselves and then find the right person to ask.
Okay, so let me give you an idea of depending on what the question is. If it's about mentoring and you have an MDiv, you'll reach out to me. Otherwise, you reach out to your district. If it's about process, like you're going to apply for provisional membership, most of that information is going to come from Adri soon, and you'll want to communicate with her about that. But when in doubt, email me. And if I'm not the person to answer your question, I will reply to you. I will copy the person that needs to answer your question, and I'll let you know. Adri can answer that question for you, or Annalee can answer that question for you. So when in doubt, email me.
All right, thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, DeAndre, did you have another question?
I did.
Okay,
Thank you for asking that question, Amy. Thank you. Thank you.
okay, anybody else?
Yeah, I had a quick question real quick. You said that you wouldn't be able to do a wedding at a beach, for example, for some other person who's not a church member. But if it was a church member, you could do the wedding at the beach. Is that what you said?
That is what I said. Bishop Leland is okay with that. Bishop Goodpastor was not. And the reason I tell you that is we're going to have another bishop, a different bishop in 18 months. So at that point, the bishop may interpret some of, and if you're still a local pastor at that point, the bishop, or under a license, which you would be as a provisional member, that bishop may interpret it differently. And we just kind of have to communicate that when we know it. But right now, that is true.
Thank you.
And just so I'm clear, you said local pastors who are currently in seminary are free to leave?
Yes, I'm going to talk about course of study. So if you're in seminary or you're getting ready to be in seminary, then you don't need to know the information about course of study. Oh, but I will tell you just this other sheet. It's called Local Pastor File Content and Checklist. And DeAndre, this is true for you too. I think this is a helpful summary of the expectations. This is what goes in your district file. You don't have to do anything with it. But if you're in course of study, you can see how they're going to track your course of study progress. They're going to check off when you've done that. Down at the bottom, they're going to track your participation in mentoring. Your mentors have to report in your attendance, and they're going to track that there. The local pastor continuance report, I should have mentioned that. All of you, including DeAndre, every year will have to answer some written questions. And when you've turned those in, they're going to check that off here. So this page is just a helpful summary of what the expectations of being a local pastor are. So I thought I would share that with you. Amy?
If we already have an MDiv, do we still need to complete that form?
No. Nobody needs to complete that form. Sorry. I'm just giving it to you for reference. It'll be in your file. They'll put it in your file. They'll complete it. I just thought it's helpful for you to see this is how they're tracking whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing as a local pastor. It's kind of nice to have it all on one page.
Yeah. Thank you.
Excuse me, Kim.
Sonia?
You did say if you were getting ready to start seminary, we could drop off at this point.
Yes. So if you're going to be in seminary pursuing an MDiv, if you have, or you're going to be this fall, you can drop off the call. So I think we're good. Are y'all ready for that?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you all. I'll continue to be in touch. So don't be surprised to hear from me.
Okay. Thank you.
We'll give them just a second to drop off, and the rest of you, then I'm going to talk about course of study.
Can I ask you a question real quick while they're doing that?
Sure.
Hey, I've got an MD, but they have not told me. It's come from another college university.
Yes.
I did a transfer, like the paperwork for transfer, and so they could let me know if they're going to accept all of my classes that I've taken. So
who did you send that to?
I've sent it like 3 or 4 times. I think it was to the district, like the district that I'm in. They asked for it.
So, Montez, where's it from?
I've got my master's was out of the Grand Canyon University, and then my seminary that I got a doctorate in seminary. It was from Atlantic Coastal University.
And what district are you
in? Northern Piedmont.
Okay, my guess is either none or not much of that will transfer in. But I'll reach out to the district to get your transcripts, and then I send them to GBHEM, which stands for General Board of Higher Education and Ministry. And they give me an idea whether anything you've taken can count toward course of study. So you need to stay on this call because you're going to want to know, even if some of it counts, it won't all count. And you're going to want to know what else you have to do and how to do it.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so friends, we have about 15 minutes because I'd like to get you out of here on time, but I'm not in a hurry. So if you need to stay around and ask questions, that'll be fine. I want to talk to you about course of study and how that works and what it looks like. So you have a document that is called Course of Study Curriculum. And that's the one we're going to look at first. That's an overview of course of study. It's the only one I forgot to print, so I'm looking at it, not at you, but maybe you can't tell the difference. Okay, so there are 20 courses in course of study. Course of study is a a program that is administered by GBHM. And let me just back up a minute. I know I've referenced that twice. GBHM, General Board of Higher Education and Ministry. So the denomination has different general agencies. For example, discipleship ministries, resources, and if you all are in licensing, raise your hand. I think all of you are in licensing school. Anybody not in licensing school? Okay, no, I'm looking at your name. No, Blythe, you're not in licensing school. Eric, you're not in licensing school. Okay, the rest of you have already written on a Facebook discussion board about discipleship ministries. So I know you're familiar with it. I was reading those today. And for Eric and Blythe, that's one of our general agencies, and they resource around discipleship, worship, music, that kind of stuff. Another one of our general agencies is the General Commission on Archives and History, and they do exactly what you think they would do. They keep the denominational archives and the historical records. Well, GBHEM relates to higher education and ordained ministry. I happen to be a board member of GBHEM. I have been for 8 years, so I know a lot about it. It's also the agency that I have to work with most in my job. But they oversee kind of the educational requirements and the course of study program. So it's not a degree program, but it is an educational requirement that you pursue these 20 courses, because it gives you a biblical, a theological, a practical, a sacramental, historical, gives you kind of the overview of all of that you need to know to lead and pastor in a church. So you can see the 20 courses. If you look at it, you'll notice that 121, 221, 321, 421, and 521 are your Bible classes. And then 122, 222, 322, 422, and 522 are your theology classes. Like, there is a method to the madness. And you're expected to take your first year courses first. So there are 4 first year courses, and your 5th year classes last. But the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th year, you're going to mix up in between, because you're going to take it when they're offered. And all 20 courses aren't offered at one time all the time. So if you've not started course of study yet, you're going to need to register for the 100 level classes. But once you get those under your belt, you can take 2, 3, and 4 classes, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th year classes as you can get to them. They're offered by Duke and Emory. They're offered by most, but not all of our United Methodist seminaries. But I would say 99.5% of our local pastors take them through Duke or Emory. Most people take it through Duke. But Emory's a really good program, and most of you have been exposed now to Emory, so you kind of know Amy and what that would look like. Their programs differ a little bit, but not much. I know more about Duke because we have more people take classes at Duke. The Duke program, well, both programs offer summer course of study normally, not this year, Candler's not, but normally, which would be in residence for 3 weeks. And in 3 weeks, you can take 4 classes. And if you're a full-time local pastor and you can work that into your schedule, that's by far the best way to do it, both because of the relationships you develop and because you can get it all done at one time like that. Your whole year requirement you can get done in 3 weeks in the summer. But if you're a part-time local pastor and you don't have the flexibility to go away in the summer like that, then you can participate in the weekend program. Now, full-time local pastors can also participate in the weekend program. That's not always been true. The weekend program at Duke is a hybrid program where you go to Duke for one weekend, a Friday and Saturday, and then you do the rest of the course virtually or online. I'm pretty sure that's true at Candler too. Okay, it says my connection's unstable. Can you still hear me? Okay, I'm just gonna keep going. I can usually tell when I've frozen up, and I'll try to stop and come back. And if you're full-time, you're expected to do 4 courses a year. If you're part-time, you're expected to do 2 courses a year. And you don't have to start that for a year. So if you want to wait until next summer or fall of 2021 to get started in course of study, that's okay. If you want to go ahead and get started this fall, that's okay too, but it's not required. If you do that, you kind of get a head start on it, which would give you more flexibility in the time frame within which you have to do it. So looking at that same document, it talks about who has to do it, where has to do it. When you have a question about course of study, like either the requirements or how do you register, you need to ask the seminary. I don't have those answers. But I'm going to tell you about scholarship information in a minute. If you have a question about that, then Adri or I is the person to ask that question. And I talked about why you have to do it and what time frame you have to do it in. So we're done with that document. The next one to look at is how to apply for a scholarship. So, and it's the last of the documents we haven't looked at. So to receive a scholarship, you can get one from the Board of Ordained Ministry. There is, I gave you the link to that where you'll find the scholarship request online, or the scholarship form to do an online request at that website. Have y'all found that page that says at the top, Western North Carolina Conference United UMC Course of Study Attendance and Scholarship Procedure? Give me a thumbs up if you found it. Okay, looks like we're good. You can get $200 per course from the Board of Ordained Ministry. I want to tell you how we get that money, because as pastors of the church, you need to know that. So part of the apportionment is called the MEF apportionment, and it stands for Ministerial Education Fund. When churches give their MEF apportionment, or they pay out their apportionments, that gives us some money to use to give seminary and course of study scholarships. It's also what underwrote your licensing school, the cost that you didn't have to pay. It will also pay for these, it's 5 things, continuing education. Anyway, that's the MEF apportionment. If churches aren't paying their apportionments, we don't have money to give. Right now we're good, but just so that you know, that's where most of our funding, or that's where all our funding for this comes from. So we can offer $200 per course. Now you can also hope, or maybe your church will have some continuing ed money and you can use that. Or maybe they can do a spaghetti supper or a hot dog cookout or something, and maybe raise some additional funds to help fund your course of study. If you find that course of study is a financial hardship, we discovered several years ago now that one of our local pastors was sleeping in his car at Duke because he could not pay for the cost of room and board to go to course of study. And at that time you had to go 4 weekends. Now you only have to go 1 weekend if you do the weekends. So anyway, if you are in the weekend program and need some additional help, you'll see on here it says additional funds are available. If you have a particular need, you just need to let Adri or I know so that we can give you some additional money. We just don't have enough money to give everybody that money. And sometimes churches help with it, or sometimes you're married to a millionaire and you don't need the help. So, so we can't give it to everybody, but we don't want it to be a financial hardship for you to participate in this requirement. The funds you apply, you can apply after you've registered. You have to send documentation of your registration with your application. But then we're going to send you the money so that we're either immediately reimbursing you or getting it ahead of time. And I'm sorry, I should know all those details, but Adri takes care of all of that. So I can't quite remember how that works. And then you're going to get a grade. They do get grades. You need a C or better. If you don't, the Board of Ordained Ministry requires a C or better. If you don't get a C or better and you have to retake it, you can't get additional funds. You can only get funds for a course one time for each different course. And that's kind of an overview of course of study. At this link, there are links to Candler and Duke's programs. So if you go to this link on our website, you can find the link to their programs and learn more about their programs from there. GBHEM also offers some online courses. We try to get that information out to you when it becomes available, because it's only a couple times a year that you can sign up for that. You can do half of the program online. So hybrid doesn't count as online. But if you are going to go through GBHEM, I don't think they offer 10 courses online yet, but at the point they offer 10 courses, you could do 10 courses online, and then you would still have to do 10 either in residence or hybrid. Okay, what other questions do you have about course of study or anything else? We have 5 minutes.
Kim, I have a question.
Okay, Pete and then JB.
It's Pete. Let's say you decide you want to go on to seminary. Can you go on and get your MD?
So you can get your, it's a Master's of Divinity and MDiv, but your course of study won't apply toward it.
Okay,
So
I was just.
Yeah, if you think
But what
you
I was
might
saying,
want, Go ahead,
If,
sorry.
like in the first year, you decide, I want to go and get my MGM instead of going to the course of study, can you do that?
That's right. It's the other educational alternative. So if you don't pursue a Master's of Divinity, then you have to do course of study. But if you want to do a Master's of Divinity, then you don't have to do course of study.
Okay.
And there's scholarship money available for that, same pot, but a different application process.
Okay.
And not nearly enough to cover the cost.
I understand that.
Okay, JB, did you have a question?
I did. You mentioned, so I know you mentioned, I think it's called GBHEM. And you can do that as well online. Can you do that? Can you mix it? Like if you do that, can you do that and Candler or that and Duke? Or how does that work?
That's a great question. As long as you take the class, it doesn't matter where you take it. So you could do the first year classes online, you could do the second year classes at Duke, you could do the third year classes at Garrett, you could do the fourth year classes at Candler. I mean, if you just really want to see the world, you could go to all the seminaries and try out their courses. But, and some of them will be, I think some of the other seminaries are starting to do some more online as well. But mostly we're going to give you the information about Candler and Duke. You can go out to the other seminary websites and see what you can find.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, it's a great question. Because the courses should be similar wherever you take them. GBHEM says what the course objective is and what the curriculum and the books and all of that. So, I mean, they're pretty consistent wherever you were to take them, other than whoever's teaching it. The great thing about, so let me just mention this because you'll hear it referenced. So there's the course of study program has regional schools, which are Duke and Candler and the other seminaries. And then they have extension programs. And so, for example, in Mississippi, they don't live close enough to a seminary for people necessarily to commute or to do a regional program. So they have a program in Mississippi that's an extension program, and somebody in the conference coordinates that program. And Candler is their parent organization, so to speak, but they use local clergy and people, maybe some Millsaps professors or somebody to teach the program. We don't have an extension program because we're close enough to do Candler or Duke. And so only if you are in the far mountains, if you're in the far western part of the state, there is a program in Tennessee that you might want to access, an extension program. We've had 1 or 2 people take some classes in that program. But Candler and Duke use their faculty and their graduate students to teach. And so they're really good teachers and people who are really excel in their topics or whatever. So we are really fortunate to be able to access 2 regional schools and for you to have kind of a choice about that and get really good education. And if you're in the far western part of the state and you need that information, send me an email. I'll have to find it, but I can get it to you. Can't remember where they meet, but somewhere in Tennessee. What other questions do you have? Anything about licensing school as well while we're on the call together? Who said Kim?
It is Chris.
Chris.
Hey, I know when we went to some of our discernment classes, they talked about Union in Charlotte.
Oh, right. I'm glad you asked that question.
Because they do it like on a Saturday, which would be better for me.
So that's an MDiv, a Master's of Divinity, not course of study, because Union is a Presbyterian seminary. You could also get your MDiv at Hood, which is in Salisbury, and that's an AME Zion seminary. But they're not United Methodist, so they don't offer this program I'm talking about. But they do offer a Master's of Divinity that's approved by the denomination.
Okay.
And they do both have a weekend program. Hood also has a weekday program. Union, I think, is exclusively on the weekend. But this program is also, the course of study can be done only on the weekend as well. You'd have to take 1 Friday off, I think, to do a course. But other than that, I think it could all be done on the weekend.
Okay.
Real quick, mainly this is kind of goes to communication, and I think everybody can attest. Right now we've got stuff coming from all different directions, but is there going to be, I think somebody mentioned new email that we'll get or something, email account, or is that
You
going to be
will.
like the funnel for everything, or?
Everything, as soon
just
as you
trying
get
to-
assigned that email, everything from the conference should come to that email address. Now, when I say that, sometimes if I send you an email and I've already sent you an email and I type in Brian King, your old email, your current email is going to pop up. But everything that comes collectively to all clergy or all clergy in the district is going to come to your conference email address. So you will want to either check it or forward it to whatever email you do check regularly. Instructions for that are on the conference website, or your district office can help you with that. But by July 1st, you should have that email. It ends in wnccumc.net.
So they'll send the information to us on that, I guess, whenever that happens.
They will. Adri
Okay,
coordinates
all right.
that, and I'm not quite sure when she plans to do it, but she will send you that information.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Sure. What other questions?
Kim, this is Will. Maybe it's different from what I experienced, but I never received a WNC email address. I had to go in and request one personally. So if there's a system in place, great. But I had to reach out personally and request one last year.
And that's because you came under appointment January 1st, right?
Yeah, I guess so, officially.
Officially, yeah. So if you're coming under appointment July 1st, you'll automatically get one. That is a failure on our part, Will. But it's anything that happens outside kind of the regular order of things. Sometimes we're not as good as remembering all the things that have to do. Did you get a license?
No, I haven't gotten anything.
You don't have that either. Okay, I'll double check on that.
And I'm assuming you guys just need my updated transcripts from my Master in Christian Education.
Yes, so what we'll do, where's it from?
Pfeiffer.
Yeah, if you'll send it to me, I'll send it to GBHM, and they'll let you know what study courses that would count, would get credit, and then they could tell you what other courses that you might need to take.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, Sigrid, do you have just a minute that I could talk to you after everybody else goes? I can tell you're trying to unmute. Just shake your head if that's okay with you. Is that okay? Okay, thank you. And Johnny, would you want to close us in prayer? I'd asked Johnny to open us in prayer, but he didn't see the email. So before we do that, just you know how to get a hold of me, and you know how to get a hold of Adri, and you know how to get a hold of your district office. So just let us know what we can do for you. I'll be back in touch with you off and on between now and the end of July when we're going to gather again. So, and I have kind of caught up with some Facebook discussion boards. So anyway, thank you. Y'all are doing a great job, and licensing school's almost done. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's a little bit different, but it's been a lot of good information.
Good information.
Okay, Johnny, close us out, please.
Let's bow our heads. Our most kind and gracious Heavenly Father, we come to you today to thank you for this opportunity that you have given us, and to thank you for these great leaders that we're working under. Dear Heavenly Father, watch over us as we go through this program. Lead us, guide us, and direct us, and give us the wisdom and the knowledge to make you, to honor you. And all God's people said, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, friends. Have a good Sunday.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you guys later.
Y'all.
Bye.
All right.
I'm done. Oh, man.
Yeah.